Snow lashed against the cracked window of a small roadside cabin. The fire in the old iron stove flickered weakly, shadows dancing across the wooden floor. She stood there, soaked, trembling, her lips pale from the cold. A woman who looked like she belonged to another world. Designer coat, diamond earrings, the kind of elegance that never touched a place like this, and yet, here she was. At the moment she whispered, "Can I slip under your blanket?" Everything inside him froze. That he wasn't used to closeness. Not since his wife left. Not since his world fell apart, but tonight, fate had brought two broken souls into one storm, and neither of them knew that this night would change their lives forever. Ethan Carter had learned to live small. His world was his little daughter, Lily, a bright 6-year-old with tangled hair and laughter that could cut through any sadness. They lived on the edge of town, where the mountains met the woods, in a small cabin that had seen better days. Every day was a struggle, working double shifts as a mechanic, coming home tired, cooking whatever was left in the pantry, and wrapping his daughter in a blanket to read bedtime stories by the dim light of an old lamp. Life wasn't easy. But it was honest, and that was all Ethan wanted. The snowstorm hit harder than anyone predicted that night. The radio had warned of road closures, but Ethan barely had time to notice. He was busy fixing a broken generator when he heard a sound outside, the screech of tires, a thud, and then silence. That he ran out into the white blur, the wind biting his face. A black SUV sat half buried in snow at the edge of the road. Inside, a woman struggled to open the door. When he pulled her out, her hands were trembling violently. Her coat was torn at the sleeve. Her eyes, fierce, proud, softened when she realized she was shivering too hard to speak. "Come inside," Ethan said gruffly, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. Inside, he offered her the blanket, hot tea, and a seat near the fire. "Thank you," she whispered, voice low and hoarse. "I didn't expect anyone to live out here." He chuckled. "Not everyone does. But I like the quiet." She nodded, staring into the fire. Her name, she finally said, was Clara Hayes. Ethan didn't know her. Not really, but if he had, he'd know that the woman sitting in his cabin was one of the most powerful CEOs in the city, the kind whose face filled magazines, whose decisions built or destroyed empires. But tonight, she was just a woman, lost, freezing, and trying not to cry. Later, as the night deepened and the storm grew louder, Lily woke up and peeked from her small bed. "Daddy," she said sleepily. "Who's the pretty lady?" Clara smiled weakly. "Just someone who needed a little help, sweetheart." Ethan tucked Lily back in and threw more wood into the fire. But the temperature kept dropping, and the old stove couldn't keep up. When Clara's teeth began to chatter uncontrollably, Ethan hesitated. He grabbed his spare blanket, thin, frayed, barely enough for one person, but before he could say anything, Clara looked at him, eyes pleading. "Can I slip under your blanket? Just until the fire catches again?" The words hit him harder than the cold. He froze, not from the temperature, but from the memories of warmth, of closeness, of a woman who once lay beside him and promised forever. But Clara wasn't her. And this wasn't that kind of night. Still, seeing her trembling, Ethan nodded silently. As she slipped under the blanket, neither of them spoke, but somehow, in the silence, two hearts that had been cold for too long began to thaw. The storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet world of white and sunlight. Ethan was up early, making pancakes, Lily's favorite. Clara woke slowly, blinking at the rays of light streaming through the frosted window. She looked around, disoriented, then smiled softly as she saw Lily sitting at the table, humming. "Good morning," Ethan said, flipping a pancake. "Hope you slept okay." Clara brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I haven't slept that peacefully in years." She hadn't meant to say it out loud. But it was true. For once, there were no boardrooms, no phone calls, no people pretending to care. Just warmth, and kindness with no agenda. Over breakfast, Lily chattered endlessly, about her school, her cat, and how her dad once burned toast 3 mornings in a row. Clara laughed, genuinely. It felt normal, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. When the tow truck finally arrived hours later, Clara stood by the door, reluctant to leave. She looked at Ethan, the quiet man who had given her more comfort in one night than luxury ever had. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You already did," Ethan replied softly. "You smiled. That's more than enough." She handed him a business card. "If you ever need anything, anything at all, call me." He nodded but didn't look at the card. He wasn't the kind of man who asked for favors. Days passed. Then weeks, until one morning, Ethan found himself standing in front of a glass tower in the city, Hayes Industries, glowing in silver letters that he wasn't there for help. He was there because his daughter's school was shutting down, and Clara Hayes, the woman from the storm, was the one who could save it. When she saw him enter the boardroom, her eyes widened. "Ethan?" He smiled awkwardly. "Didn't mean to show up like this. But I thought maybe you'd listen." And she did. More than that, she felt that in that moment, Clara realized that what she'd found in that cabin wasn't just warmth in the cold. It was something far rarer, the reminder of what it meant to care. Weeks later, she funded the school anonymously. Ethan never asked why. But he knew that winter night had connected them, two hearts from different worlds, drawn together by a storm neither of them saw coming. And sometimes, love doesn't start with promises or fireworks. Sometimes, it starts with a blanket and a whispered question in the cold.